everybody. Welcome to another episode of Live Wire TV. This is the place where we like to talk all about business strategies, mindset strategies, and marketing strategies to take your mindset and your business to that next level. Each week, we have on an incredible guest that talks all about the area of expertise. We have really inspiring conversations that are ultimately designed to empower your growth. Now, Livewire TV is a part of Livewire Media where we do corporate videography and video marketing. Now, my guest for this week, a lot of you will already know him, Saj Hussain. Saj, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rahini. Absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
I'm so excited that you are here, and I'm genuinely surprised that you managed to find some time in your hectic calendar to be here.
Well, it did take us a little while backwards and forwards with dates to try and get this in, but I'm
Yeah.
so pleased to be here.
So, for those of you who don't know Saj Hussain, he is an absolute legend when it comes to property investing. There is literally nothing he doesn't know. So, what we're going to be covering in today's show is a bit about Saj's backstory, who he is as a person, and ultimately creating wealth through property and whether or not it's actually worth getting into property as well. So, Saj, I'm going to hand it over to you to give us a bit of a brief introduction as to who you are and what you guys do at the Big Property Group.
Sure, absolutely. I was born in 1969, and no, I'm kidding. I'm not going to go that far back. I'm not going to have a backstory that far back. Essentially, as a very young person, I was 12, 13 years old. I was really keen to do better and have the things that other kids in school had that I didn't have. And that's really, I think, where my drive came from at a very young age. In the early 80s, when I was at school, became quite trendy to have designer clothes, and I could barely afford the £10 trainers, never mind any designer stuff. I mean, mom and dad did the best they could for me, but when you're in an environment like that, you just aspire to have more. And it's thinking about, why is it that we can't have those things and other people can? And I think that instills something in me in a very, very young age. And I always had a fairly entrepreneurial mindset from then on, thinking, right, I want to work for myself, I want to do well. Late 80s, it was about being a stockbroker, because apparently that's where all the money was, and hey, that's what you needed to do. But over time, things have evolved, and I ended up getting involved in computing and selling computer equipment, setting up networks. That's really what my first main business was. I've been involved in lots of different businesses over the years. I did that for about 15 years. I did very well for a period of time. But then, unfortunately, due to a series of bad decisions on my part, ultimately we put that business flat on its face, and I ended up getting wiped out. And I'd spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point. And I learned so much more on the journey down than I did on building that business. But the one thing that it taught me was, we spend hours and hours trying to create something which is just effectively an income for that day. We go out, we work, and when I think about some of my friends who were at university with me, they had very well paid jobs. At the end of the day, they were still going to get paid. When you've got your own business, doesn't matter what it is, you're always grafting, hustling to be able to effectively just put food on the table. And we all go through feast and famine. Sometimes we're doing really well, everything's amazing, and the next month we're on a downer. We're struggling with so many different challenges, and that just seemed to be the nature of my business life, if you like, up to that point. And then
just
when I went
on
through
that note as well, because whilst you were seeing your friends in very successful jobs, you were obviously on that roller coaster trying to build and establish a successful business, which is what you've got now. But I imagine at that time, like, you went through a lot of mental and emotional challenges. So tell us a bit about that, like how you dealt with that.
Absolutely. It's very tough when I think about it now and I look back, and some of my friends were doing very well paid jobs. We were at university together, and I was struggling. Some months I was doing okay, some months not too bad. And then it started to build over time, because I guess it's a little bit like a hockey stick effect. You get nothing happening, and then all of a sudden you get this boost. And that sometimes happens in business. But during that time, there were many times where my wife said, maybe you should just get a proper 9 to 5 job. And I think, no, that's definitely not what I'm doing. I'm going to be seeing this thing through. And reality, as business people, and at the time I was probably earning maybe less than some of my friends were earning, but I was probably working twice the number of hours they were working just to do that. But now when I speak to some of those now, they talk about, oh, I'd love to go off and do my own thing and start my own business. But, I've got the mortgage, I've got the car finance, I've got kids in private school. I can't give up the safety of a job now to go and do this. So once I think it's ingrained in you, and if you're the kind of person that think, I just want to find my own way in life, I don't think entrepreneurship is not necessarily something you're born with, but a certain type of trait in a person, someone that's very driven, will always, I think, succeed more so than those that are always looking for a safety net. Because when we run our own businesses, we don't really have that safety net. And I think that's the thing many people struggle with.
Yeah. I mean, I know that you're an avid reader. Are there any books that you'd recommend to the viewers?
Some of my favorite books are How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that's probably my most favorite book. And the reason for that is when I first got involved in property. And so if I just explain why I got involved in property, someone that's of an Asian background, we talk about, we need to buy property, it's a good asset, but I never did. And I never got involved. And even though my dad was saying, you need to buy property, I never really got involved until that point where I'd pretty much lost everything and I had to start again. And I thought, what's the one thing that we can do that will outlive me, which will be based on something that will continue to create an income regardless of my efforts? And it was, how do you create an asset that's going to generate income? And then that's where property was the thing that kept coming back again and again. This is the way to do it. The challenge was I didn't really have a lot of money, or not a lot of money. I really didn't have any money at that time. And is it possible to get involved in property? But that's a whole different story. We might get into that. But as I got into that world, I started realizing a lot of it was about people you knew and connections you had. And that's why I referenced that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, because it really got me thinking about the importance of understanding other people. My business is mostly driven around finding good property deals, finding investment for those deals, helping other people in their property investing journey. All of that, if you strip it back, it's about people. And having great people skills will certainly put you ahead in business. It doesn't matter what business you do. So I think that's my most favorite book.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that one, because ultimately anything that you're doing in business, you're selling yourself or you're selling something. So you have to have the people skills to a certain level in order to massively succeed. Did you feel like you've always had the skill there?
I think I was fairly introverted as a kid in my teen years. As I got to college, I say blossomed a little bit more, became a bit more social. And when I got to university, I become very social to the point that I forgot we were there to study. So I think I evolved over time. But I think these are skills we can all learn. And I have 4 kids, and I try to ingrain it in them. There's one core skill you need to do well in life, and that's the ability to be able to communicate. And when I talk about communication, when we apply that to business, that's marketing and sales. That's essentially what we're doing when we're communicating. We're communicating a message in marketing, and we're communicating why we might be the right people to do business with in a sale or affecting the closing of a sale. So I think if you master the ability to communicate effectively, that could be the written form, spoken form, like now we're on camera, or whether it's a live audience. Sometimes people are more fearful of speaking on a stage than they are of death, and that sounds crazy, but these are all learned skills because they can really help us in business. So I think the number one skill comes down to our ability to be able to communicate effectively, which again goes back to the book we talked about earlier.
100% with you on that one. And guys, if you have any questions for Saj, drop them in the comment section below and we'll be answering them live for you right now. Or if you're watching on the replay, I'm sure Saj will be more than happy to follow up with you guys as well. Absolutely. So yeah, get your questions in the comment section below and we'll be answering them for you. So
a quick caveat.
You decided that you wanted to get into property, and a lot of people get involved in property. They get their first few, but then they kind of hit a bit of a brick wall in terms of scaling up, don't they? But you've managed to push past that brick wall. You've managed to build a very successful business in property, and you've managed to scale up. And I know you've only just really scratched the surface with it. So what would be your advice to the people who do have a few properties under the belt, but they're looking to take it to that a whole new perspective? They're looking to be where you are today.
I think with property or with any business, the way we need to think about these things is we have to have big dreams and big aspirations if we want to do well. I think many people struggle with, oh, how can I do that? I couldn't possibly do that, as opposed to how is it possible? How could it be done? And having that optimistic, open mindset, that curious mindset of how is it going to be possible? How could we do this? Then we find ways. Our brains very, very it's an amazing tool that we've been blessed with, and we don't use it very much. When you look at some of the science, we barely use a tiny percentage of our brain's capability because we get into this mindset of in a tunnel vision, the way we work. And when we expand our thinking, so much more is possible. So to answer your question, how do you build something bigger? Many people, for instance, that may have, say, 1 or 2 properties, they've saved up the deposit for that property, they've purchased that property by a deposit and a mortgage, and they might have a couple of properties they've done. Some people maybe even inherited a property. But then how do you grow beyond that? That's where many people struggle with. And when we look at property as a whole sector, there are so many different ways to make money from property. The ownership of assets that generate income, yes, they need to be acquired, but they don't need to be your money. Most people would purchase property with mortgages. That means the bank is lending you, say, 75% of that to do a purchase anyway. But does it have to be the bank? And what I realized earlier on, if your deal's good enough, you can find people that will bring the funds to work with you. So essentially, that's how I built my business in the early days. Started partnering with other people who would fund the deals, and that means we can go out and keep buying. If you think about it this way, if you had endless access to money, what would you do in property? What would people say? Oh, I'll just buy as many as you can. Why would you buy as many as you can? What type of property would you buy? Where would it be? And when you narrow it down into this is a good deal because it does X, Y, Z, it produces a healthy income, it's in an area where there's going to be high capital growth over time. When you understand what is it about that that's appealing, and if it's something that's going to make money, there's always going to be people interested in working with you. So that's just one example of how to build something like that. When we look at, for example, Donald Trump, love him or hate him, is effectively a property developer who started with very little money. He used some of his father's brand and reputation and built a property empire, leveraging other people's money, and understood the power of a brand, and then ended up being one of the most powerful people in the world. So it just goes to show, if somebody else has achieved it, if another human being has achieved it, we can all do these things. And one of the things I keep trying to remind myself about is the first person, Roger Bannister, who ran a mile in, was it under?
It was under a minute, something like that.
I think it was under 4 minutes, 3 minutes or 4 minutes. I can't remember exactly now. So he was the first person to do that. Before that, nobody had done that before. But soon as he had done that, within a year, so many other people did it as well. Although we don't remember that, and many people don't talk about that, but so many other people achieved it within a year of him doing it. So what happened? Did the whole human race get faster? No, what happened is that they created the belief that if one person can do it, somebody else can do it. And sometimes when we look at, okay, how is it possible? I like to think, okay, who else has done this? Who else can we model? Who else can we learn from? How can we apply what they're doing in our business? How can we take something from another industry and apply it into our industry to be able to build and achieve what we want? It's a bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that sort of gives you an idea that there are just so many ways you can build a property business without having access to huge amounts of money.
I was going to say, because you covered so much in that whole segment there, and I think one of the things that hold people back from investing in property is they feel like they have to have all the money up front in order to get started. But with what you're saying that's not the case. You can actually leverage other people's money to get yourself started, and then you can essentially pay them back, right?
Yeah, whether they become a long-term partner, whether they're a short-term partner and you pay them out of the deal and you end up with a deal. And it's absolutely right what you say. And the analogy that I think about is when we go into a destination, do we wait until all the traffic lights are green and we know they're green before we set off on our journey? No, we don't. And we never would, because it's not going to happen. So you set off on your journey, and yes, you're going to hit some red lights and some lights are going to be green, but you'll make it to your destination as long as you're clear in terms of where it is you're trying to get to. Yes, you're going to have some disruption along the way, but if you stay focused on what is it you want to do, you'll find the how to do it along the way. And too many people try and work out everything before they even start, and ultimately what happens, they never get started.
Yeah, I think it's best to take imperfect action rather than just nothing at all, rather than trying to wait for things to be perfect and aligned and wait for the stars to align. Then to
Yeah,
just
completely agree with you.
right? So with property investing, like a lot of people are saying it's quite volatile at the moment. Is that true?
Well, property will, I think volatile is a strong word. The market constantly evolves, and that's probably the phrase that I prefer to use. The market is not static. It wouldn't be a market if it was static. It's constantly changing. Sometimes it's doing very well in the sense prices are rising. Depending on what side of the fence you're on, you might not be doing so well if prices rise if you're trying to buy. But other times, the market might be much slower. It's easier to sell property than it is to buy. So it's constantly changing, and there's so many factors that affect the property market. But as with any type of business, what you have to do is say, what can I manage and what can't I manage? And the bits that I can't manage, what impact would they have on my business? So for instance, when I first got involved in property, at that time, this was the early stages of the crash that we had in 2007, around that sort of time. Many people lost their property portfolios or sold their property portfolios because they were over leveraged. They didn't have any other strategy in terms of what do I do. They borrowed too much money from the bank, and it's because they were thinking about one specific way of doing things. Now, with property, there's just so many ways that you can make money, and if you understand that, you evolve and adapt as the market adapts. So for instance, for the last 10 years or so, we've been building great quality, high-end shared houses where we've got 5-6 people living together. And as that market's evolved and changed and adapted, we have as well. So the houses we create today are very different from the ones that we created 10 years ago. So as the market adapts and evolves, you have to adapt and evolve. And you would do that in any business. You would treat property as any other business as well. So volatile, I think, is a wrong word to use. I think a constantly evolving market is probably more accurate of what happens in property.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Yeah. So, Saj, I know that a lot of people watching this will want to learn more about property investing. How can they do that?
Well, I share a lot of content on how to do things on my property channel on YouTube. So I'd suggest have a look at that, which is Saj Hussain. Just look me up on YouTube, you'll find me. And I've also just now restarting our monthly property meeting, which I know you've been to before as well. We've moved now to a bigger venue, Edgbaston Cricket Stadium. We're restarting on Tuesday the 9th. So it'll be a fantastic place to come and learn, network with other people, meet like-minded people. Some people have much more experience, you'll see. Some people will be early in their journey. We get great speakers. In fact, this month on our launch meeting, we've got Neville Wright. If people don't know Neville Wright, he had a business called Kiddie Care, which is a little bit like mother care type of business with some prams and that kind of thing. And you think, how much money could there be in that? Well, he sold that business for 70 million to Morrison's. So that's quite a substantial business. But his background is in property. He's been a property investor, developer since the early 70s. And he's built about 600 homes. So somebody we can learn a vast amount from in terms of not only from property, but also business as well. So he's our headline speaker on Tuesday the 9th.
Guys, I definitely recommend getting yourself down to the event. And Saj, make sure that you drop the booking link for that event in the comment section below. I've been to a few of Saj's event myself, and I can tell you they are phenomenal. You meet so many like-minded people. You meet people who are in positions that you want to be in so you can learn from them. And it's just a great overall fun, friendly, relaxed evening. And you'll leave on a high. Literally, you'll leave on such a buzz and a high. It's incredible. So definitely get yourself booked on for that and definitely connect with Saj. And Saj, just before we wrap up, what would be your 3 pieces of key advice for the viewers right now?
I think if you're, although I'm talking about property, this could be in any general business context as well. I think the first thing I think is important when you're starting out in property or business is have a clear outcome of what is it you're ultimately trying to achieve and have clarity around that. Too many people turn up and think, oh, I just want to make more money. Well, here's £5, you made more money, now on your way. But that's probably not what they were thinking about. So having clarity, what is it exactly you're trying to achieve? So a certain amount of income each month, building up capital for the long term, for retirement, trying to create a legacy. So having clarity. And then secondly, it's thinking about, right, what resources do I have available to me? What's my strengths? And sometimes it's as simple as doing a SWOT analysis. What am I really good at? What resources do I have available to me? What maybe am I not so good at? What could I do with getting some support on? And then, modeling. Number 3 is modeling and learning from people who've already done what you've done. I have so many mentors. I mentor lots of people in the property space as well, because ultimately you're leveraging somebody else's experience to get there. So when we talked about Roger Bannister earlier on, so once people understood somebody can do it, other people then create the belief that they can do it too. And that helps us so much, because I think as human beings, we really struggle sometimes to see something that we think is too far away. But when we can see somebody that's done that and we can connect and learn from them, it can make it so much easier for us. So those would be my 3.
Amazing. Amazing bits of advice, Saj. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to you, the viewer, for joining us today as well. Do connect with Saj as well, because honestly, we're not regretting it. He's all about mindset and growth and wealth creation. There's literally nothing about property he doesn't know. So go and check out his YouTube channel as well.
Thank you. Just
See
a
you
quick
guys
caveat.
next Thursday, 7 p.m. for another awesome, empowering conversation.
Thank you.